Hello and welcome to the Denver Homes Market Report. This is Ricky Schoonover with 8Z Real Estate, and you're tuned into the Denver Homes Market Report. So today I have a very special episode going on. I've got Christopher Weber here from Orchestrated Light Real Estate Photography. So I'm going to introduce Chris. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Christopher Weber. I own Orchestrated Light Photography, and as we have grown, it's more media than just photography. We do, video and 3D floor plans. So pretty much any media that you need for real estate, we provide.
Got it. So a little quick backstory between Chris and I. We met. I used to be at another brokerage, and Chris met one of the administrators there on a plane.
That's right. Actually, it was on a boat.
Oh, it was on a boat. Okay, so you guys met on a boat.
We were on a cruise. On the Danube.
Cool.
And from Passau to Budapest.
Okay.
And we just happened to sit at the dining table with them and started talking. Where are you from? Oh, Denver. Oh, yeah, me too. What do you do? And that was Joy.
Yeah.
And so she said she worked for a real estate company.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do real estate photography. And so I gave her my card, and we had brought my mother along with us. This was my wife and my mother.
Yeah.
My mother had spent a lot of time growing up, or going to college in Germany, and spent a lot of time living over there, and actually joined the military to move us over there when we were kids.
Wow. And
so she's getting older, and so we thought, let's bring her along. And we went to Heidelberg, which was where all her friends were.
Yeah.
So we shared the story with everybody, and Joy and her husband just, really liked my mom and wanted to sit with us every evening. And it was a great cruise.
So it was a cruise, not a flight. That's good. It's been about 7 years or 8 years, so memory gets lost. But
exactly.
But it's just, my point was that you never know when you're going to meet somebody, and here you are on the Danube, and meet somebody that then brings you all the way back to your roots back in Denver, where you're doing something in a related field.
And what was funny is I had walked into that office a couple of times and dropped off cards. It was a company that I had wanted to work for.
Yeah.
And so
Joy came to us at one of our weekly meetings. She said, "Hey, I met this guy." Like I said, I got the story messed up a little bit, but met this guy when we were traveling, and here's his card, his information. He got on his website. So I went on his website and checked it out, and I had used another company before and was looking for another option. So it was a perfect timing for me to meet Chris. And then the very first time we met, I started talking back and forth a little bit. And he got my attention when he said he used to race mountain bikes. So I used to race mountain bikes when I was like 18 years old. He was at a higher level than I ever was. But we started talking about mountain bikes, and that kind of bonded our relationship a little bit. And then we started working together as far as the photography. Obviously, the photography is fantastic. And like Chris was just saying, it has evolved over time as people's tastes change and as technology changes, different things come into fashion or out of fashion. And I've seen that in my almost decade here now in Denver of different things being important, whether that's like virtual tours, where that was super important for a long time. I'm kind of seeing that those are not quite as important, like especially like some of them where they have the little circle that you'll see. You end up running yourself into a wall, and then you're trying to turn the corner. You almost have to have a degree on how to use the darn thing to even function on those virtual tours. So I'm kind of shying away from those a little bit right now. But what I do like, and what Chris provides every time, is he'll go around and he'll do a floor plan. And I'm finding those are more useful when people can look at the floor plan from a bird's eye view and just look at, okay, well, here's the bedroom, here's the bathrooms, that kind of stuff. I find that's more helpful even in the virtual tours. And then the photography is fantastic. So that's really where it comes down to. So today, let's talk about like your passion. Like, where did it come from? Like, what did you do before real estate photography, if anything? And then how did you get to like where we are now?
Well, I've always loved photography, even as a kid. And growing up in Germany, going to the PX, and looking at all the cameras behind the counter, and I knew which ones I wanted, and I knew what all the features were and everything, but. My dad had an old Pentax, and so he's like, well, you can have this. I'm not going to get you a new one. So I played around with that. I really got into it. And then it just wasn't something that I understood like how to make a living at.
Sure.
And so I was good at math and science. So I ended up getting a degree in applied physics. Then for grad school, I went to the Colorado School of Mines and the physics department, and was going in the optics direction in physics. And after 1 year, I ended up transferring to environmental science and engineering. And so I got a degree in that. I got a master's.
I find it fascinating that you had this sort of passion or this sort of idea when you were young for the cameras. And I always think like people either have a left-sided brain or a right-sided. Like I cannot even draw a stick figure, but I love art, but I can't draw it myself. And I think like some people that you got the total package to have this creative side in your brain, yet you still also have this like mathematics science side. And I don't know if everyone has that balance.
No, it's when I've taken the left brain, right brain tests, I'm always right in the middle.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that. That's I don't think most people have that.
No.
I've met a few that do, but it can be helpful in a lot of ways, but it can also, it's harder to make a decision because I'm kind of seeing both sides of a story.
Are you a Libra in your astrological sign?
Sagittarius. But yeah, it's I tend to be the one in the family that everybody comes to because I am relatable. I can see both arguments.
Yeah.
So I can help resolve issues sometimes a little better.
Okay.
But yeah, so I've always had that creative side. I'm not very good at creating art from nothing.
Sure.
But I did find out when I finally started needing readers that I had 2010 vision. And I just happened to casually mention it to the optometrist, and he's like, well, let's test your vision further. And he's like, yeah, you're 2010. So I can see things further away. I can see, I tend to notice things that most people won't see. And it drives my wife nuts because I'm always seeing wildlife and things. She's like, how do you see that? I never see that. So I'm a visual person.
Yeah.
So it's, and I've always known that. And I've always seen scenes that, I'll just stop and I just find them aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
It just feeds my soul.
Sure.
Like, wow, that's amazing. And so I've always had a desire to try and capture that in a camera. And, but again, in college, photography classes were hard to get into.
Okay.
And I also didn't, I guess, understand, again, how to make a living.
I love this, but how am I going to do photography and make a living at it at the same time? I have to do the math and science route in order to make money and then go do this as a hobby.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the plan. And so I was a water resources engineer, water consultant for about 15 years. So out of grad school, worked for 2 different companies, and just got to a point where, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to work for myself.
Yeah.
And I looked at a lot of different options. I actually looked with another friend of mine who was part owner of a successful restaurant, and looked into the restaurant business, and
I've always had a dream of opening a restaurant. Actually, even when I was really young, my very first job, actually, my sister helped me get. I think I was 14 or 15 years old. I think my mom had to sign a note for me to work there. But it was called Leatherby's Family Creamery. It was out in El Cajon, which is a suburb outside of San Diego. And I was born in San Diego, so that was my very first job, was working in a restaurant. And they made their own ice cream in house, and then we served like sandwiches and stuff like that. And so I started dishwasher there, and worked my way up to the grill, and was working on the grill. And then I went on to restaurant stuff, and I'll talk about it a little later. But went into restaurant stuff later, and I always had a dream to do it. But the older I got, the more like afraid, and the more I realized that what I didn't know about the restaurant business, and how brutal it can be, and how the profit margins are so small. And it seems like you're making a lot of money, right? You go to a restaurant, you sit down, you're paying $60-$80 for a steak, and you're like, wow, this place must be making bank. Their margins are pretty slim.
And so I was realizing all of these things as we were looking, and realizing I had put some money away so that I could afford to, look into doing something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I realized that in the restaurant business, that money would disappear quickly.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just too big of a risk. So I was like, well, and photography had been kind of the thing that I was going to look into a lot of other things, but the last thing was going to be photography.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to, if none of that else interests me more than photography, I'm coming back to photography. And, but, in the year or two before that, I was actually looking at properties. And I was looking in the Highlands, and, the photography, and of course, this was 15 years ago.
Okay.
The photography was not great. I thought maybe 10 to 20% of the properties actually had okay photography, and the rest was just not very good. And I thought, well, that's something I could do. That's easy.
Yeah.
And then, so when I decided to jump into photography, I looked at all kinds of different areas of interest, and architecture has always been something I've been interested in. And then thinking back to the real estate, I thought, houses are always going on the market. There's always a need for that type of photography.
Sure.
And that might be
there's your niche.
a way in to photography, and I'll branch out into other areas, which hasn't happened because I've been so busy.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it's a good problem. Yeah. So so I spent, it turned out, about 3 months trying to figure out how to shoot real estate photography. And again, this is before there was a lot of tutorials online. Now there's people out there saying, I've got a whole, what do you call it, a course on how to shoot real estate photography. And so this was kind of before that. Digital was just still in the early stages, so there wasn't a lot of information. So I had to figure it out kind of on my own.
Almost a good thing that it was a newer, emerging technology that now you can kind of learn, because everyone else is learning too. That even if they've been doing it for the previous 20 years, when that technology evolves, it's sometimes a good time for people to jump into something. I think right now with AI, I'm 55 this year, so I'm probably not going to be doing all that much with AI. But I think like a younger generation, the next ones that come in, that will be like our internet. That will be like when internet started, when you had the little green cathode ray screen and the MS-DOS and all that stuff. And I think I was in 4th grade or 5th grade, and I looked at it and I was like, this isn't, who in the hell is ever going to use this? What's this ever for? So they're typing all these little codes and everything to make a little stick figure dance or something. And from thinking from there, and now I'm looking at like AI and not only AI and 3D printing, I think are the next two things that will go hand in hand, where I think that's going to be revolutionary. And I probably won't be here to see it, but the next generation, it's going to be a wild ride.
I don't know. It's moving quickly.
It is moving quickly.
So, and so that was really back when things were going from film to digital. That was, and then HDR was like a brand new thing as well. And so that's when I jumped in. And but I mean, we've had other technological things come along that has made it easier, because HDR has become a lot easier.
Yeah.
And now you can send it off to editors, and now AI is able to do editing. Some companies are actually using AI. I have found still that that's
as it progresses.
Sure. I think it'll get there.
Yeah.
And it's progressing quickly. So, let's see. So, I started learning how to do this type of photography, and it turns out it wasn't as easy as I thought it was. Camera sensors and film is not as sensitive as your eyes. And so, like, I'm looking at you, I can see the detail in the blacks over here, I can see the window over there, and that's all in focus and exposed properly. But if you take a picture of that, the window's going to be blown out, the blacks are going to be too dark. So they have about half the range of our eyeballs.
I learned a little about this morning before you got here. I was setting up in our house here, and I was trying to figure out what lights to have on, and trying to figure out which lights to have on, and which ones to have on. And one's all the way over there. We're still showing up in the frames of the pictures and all that. I was like, all right, we're in a house, we're in my lounge. It's just going to be what it is. We're going to do the best we can with what we got. So it's not a professional setup here, But you're right. Everything affects it, and it's different than you looking at it with a naked eye.
Right. And so the difference between, anyway, so I learned, how to do interior photography, which is, more, like I said, more challenging than I expected.
Yeah.
And then just kept working at it and tried to come up with something that was, popped a little bit more than what I was seeing out there, but also had truer colors, and there's just a lot of details that you have to pay attention to. And like you said, the lighting and knowing what lights to turn off, what windows to close for a certain shot.
I'll tell you, when I go to my photo shoots, I try to go to all my photo shoots, even though I probably don't need to as a realtor. I could probably just tell Chris, hey, here's the code. The seller knows you're going to be there at this time, and go and do your shots. But I like to be there because I do learn from it. But I do also know that while we're doing that, 90% of my time is getting out of Chris's way. And it doesn't matter where I'm at, the shadows or whatever. He'd be like, hey, can you go upstairs? Can you go downstairs? Can you just go outside in your car? Sometimes I feel that way. He never kicks me out. No. But I do find that no matter where you're at in the house, even if you're taking a shot this way, everything that's over here is going to affect that shot. And just knowing that, right now we have these fancy guys. I just bought a new camera. I just bought this new Samsung. I love it. And so I'm seeing a trend right now, and it's not a great trend I'm seeing, especially in the market that we're in right now. Yeah. I got into real estate before Zillow, and when Zillow came on, everyone thought, oh, you're gonna. That's going to be the end of realtors. Like, you can just put your house on Zillow, someone's going to come and buy it. Well, the perfect example of that, whenever someone brings that up or we start talking about that subject comes up, I'll bring up a perfect example of, first of all, travel agents were the first ones to go. When the internet started coming up, everyone stopped using a travel agent because you could just go on and book your flights online. So that was one industry that got decimated by technology. And then the next one was when Zillow came along. I got in 2003 for real estate. So Zillow was a new thing. It was regional, and then went nationwide in like 2006. And everyone thought real estate was done, right? You're just going to go on and buy your house. Well, you could say that, but then look at the rental market. There used to be property managers, and they still have them in, like, when I lived in Boston, they had fee and no fee apartments or fee and no fee listings. So you'd go into this little boutique shop there, and they'd be a real estate office, but they did property management. You'd go in there, and they would show you some listings and say, okay, these are free or fee free. These don't cost you anything. That's because they were getting a fee from the seller or the owner of the property to rent those out. So those you could rent and not pay a fee. And then they had a bunch more that you could rent, but you had to pay a fee because they were going to make a fee from the listing person that had that one listed. So they were sharing the listings in that manner. And they had ones that you didn't have to pay any fee and you could rent those. And then ones that you could rent, but you had to pay like a half a month or 1 month's rent. And because they were splitting that fee with the folks that are sharing, like a collaborative thing. And so I know they still have that in New York. It's a big thing. That's how Barbara Corcoran got really huge back in the day, was doing rentals. And then Boston was like that. But in most cities, they don't have a really robust rental market. It's mostly been destroyed. And now you have to go on apartments.com, then Zillow rentals.com, and then you're looking on Craigslist, which gosh knows who you're going to run into on that thing, or Facebook marketplace, things like that. So it's kind of all over. And it's like, these are the biggest, or for most people, or a lot of people, this is the biggest investment of your life is your home. And do you want to be going around chicken pecking, looking on this site for these homes and this site for those homes? It becomes you don't have, you end up not having like a centralized spot. So with the MLS, and we still have it in place, even though Zillow's been around since 2006, we didn't go anywhere. We realized that real estate is more than just looking at the house online. But why I wanted to bring that up is leading into that is when someone goes on Zillow, we have a short attention span. So when someone goes on Zillow or any of those websites, doesn't matter which one it is. That's another misconception I like to bring up, is that the MLS is the database. That's where all the listings are, at least 95% of them. And then we all license to pull that information into our website. And Zillow is no difference. All they do is license the MLS to pull that data in. So if it's in the MLS, it's going to be in Zillow. The only reason it's in Zillow and not in the MLS is, well, for two reasons. First of all, the websites aren't required to follow the same rules. So if they're selling advertising on that site, they may be a little slower to like update their system and put that one as pending if it's already been pending. I'll get calls sometimes like, hey, we want to go look at this house, and I'll look it up and it's been pending for 3 weeks, or it's been sold for 3 months, but somehow they found it on a website. So they're not required to update the system. When we go to the MLS and update it, we're required to do it in a timely manner is what they say. I think it's about 24 to 36 hours, but we have to keep the database fresh. So that way when folks are going out to look at homes, or they're scheduling with their realtors to go look at homes, that's up to date so that it's accurate. And so that's just one of the things where Zillow didn't take over our jobs. But what it did do is allow the consumer to go on there and look at pictures. and they swipe 1 or 2 pictures, and if those pictures don't like pull them into that listing, and they're looking at hundreds sometimes, because that's the other thing. Zillow wants you to look at all the clicks, right? The more clicks they get, the more money they make. So they want you to go down these rabbit holes. In real estate, from a realtor's perspective, we want to get you focused in on the home you want. So when we're doing our interviews and I'm doing my consultations, I'm like, okay, what's your price range? Have you been pre-approved? Let's make sure you're pre-approved for that. And then, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, garages? And we try to take that funnel and try to bring you down here to the homes that you want. And then Zillow does the other thing where they're like, okay, you're going to suck you in right here, and they're going to get you to go look at all these homes. You're going to be like, this one, this one, this one. And as you do that, you're going to find out for one reason or the other. If you and I have had a conversation and you told me what you're looking for, and I've got you down here, you're calling me every week and say, hey, I saw this on Zillow. I saw that on Zillow. And then I say, yeah, well, that one's on Evans Street and you didn't want a busy road, or that one's, behind whatever it is. So my point is that we're trying to bring you down into this funnel to where we're dripping down to you the homes that you actually want. Whereas Zillow and those other sites are like, oh yeah, click mania. We want to bring you down so you're clicking on everything because they're making all kinds of money off you to do that. So that's kind of where we differ with the whole Zillow thing. But I can just see that with technology and with our phones, people being like, well, I don't need a photographer. I can just go use my phone. I've got the new Apple 17 or whatever it is, and I can go take pictures. But you can tell if you're a realtor, I don't even think you need to be a realtor. I think you can just go online and you can see they're boxy. They don't hold the camera right. They don't match up to the MLS. The MLS has their own set of standards for the like what the pixels are or whatever. You can speak to that better than I can. But they have a certain parameter you need. And if you don't do that, they don't show up in the MLS properly. And then people are going on your Zillow. On the biggest investment, you're paying a realtor, 3, 4, 5, 6%, whatever it is that you're paying to have your home sold. And the very first thing that a consumer sees is on this online picture of this awkward color or awkward shape or angle or bad lighting, whatever it is. And they're like, nope. And they go on to the next listing. So how do you combat that with the new phones?
It's kind of a running joke every time, there's a new iPhone or something that comes out. Within real estate photographer community. It's like, there go our jobs, but they do have a lot of great technology on them. And I mean, if you take the time to learn how to use them, you could get away with certain situations. But in the end, a professional photographer is going to know the right angles, is going to know how to handle any lighting situation, crazy colors on the walls, dark houses, bright houses. And there are different ways, to shoot each property, to shoot each situation. And some people come in, and I guess the main thing is, we bracket our photos. So you get underexposed and overexposed. And then, if you're still doing HDR, it blends them together.
Okay.
I've personally moved on from HDR. I think there are better methods. But I mean, that's the main thing. We're going to get clear window views. And hopefully you're going to get good angles that really show the property. You're going to, a professional photographer is going to find the special features of the home and know how to capture those. The ones that I see where people have gone in with their phones and taken the photos is, the angles are awkward. They're not showing you, it's just like, that's not really showing me anything valuable. It's a picture of the room, but it's like, I would like to see it from this angle or that angle. The professional photographer is going to know where to go to get those angles.
I know last year at our AZCon, we have a conference every year with AZ Real Estate, and we go to this conference. We all come together because we cover all zip codes in Colorado. AZ is every zip code in Colorado starts with 8. So that's how they came up with the name. And so we cover every zip code in Colorado. We're not outside of Colorado now, but we have office here. We have in Denver. We have an office in Boulder. We've got one in Buena Vista. We've got one in Aspen. So we got offices all over Colorado. And we have a conference. Everyone comes together for this conference. And so one of the things last year was real estate photography and really focusing on our branding and making sure that every photographer that we have in our database are on brand with what we're looking for. And they talked a lot about like vignette, like where they have like with a shot of in a larger room where the bed is in the middle, the two nightstands on the thing, and more of these square shots instead of trying to do these like weird angles and all these things to try to really capture it and almost look like a high-end magazine type photography rather than just going in there and randomly shooting a bunch of random angles.
Right.
So you need a professional.
Well, and actually to that, so you have big companies that have a ton of photographers, and you place your order and you get whoever shows up, and you don't have a personal relationship with that photographer. That photographer doesn't know the specific things that you like captured in your property, and so working with somebody that you've built a relationship with, like I know what you like. Easier for me to shoot your properties because I know you. Yeah,
well, it's easier for me to call you because I know what I'm going to get and I know who's going to show up. Even if it's not because he's only one person, you can't be everywhere. But you have a limited number of photographers that you work with, and I think only 2 that I know is it okay if so and so, and they're fantastic, and I know that they're all on the same page and they all know me, so it's perfect for me. Some of the other companies, like you said, you don't know. It's a crapshoot who you're going to show up to your door, and it's not that you can turn them away, but you just don't know what you're going to get. And sometimes they're great, and sometimes not so great.
Right, and and I have actually 4 photographers.
4 photographers. So you're growing.
Well, I mean, we've had them for 5 years now.
Okay.
So, but 2 of them are a little harder to schedule. So we have 2 that you've probably worked with that are we can usually get on a shorter notice.
Sure. Okay.
2 of them have other things going on, and so they tend to be booked out a little bit further. So, but we use them. We still use them occasionally.
Yeah.
But they've all been with me for 5 years. They all know our system, how everything works, and really, the way I like to look at it is, if I'm your photographer, that's part of your brand is the photography that you're bringing to the listing.
100%.
So if you're just using a company that sends whoever, it might be harder to build a brand. I know they're trying to keep things as consistent as possible, but every photographer has slightly different angles. Yeah. Every photographer is going to do things a little bit differently. And so, so when you just have a rotating band of photographers coming through your business, it's hard to build anything around that because it's always changing. Yeah. And like I said, all of my photographers have been with me for 5 years.
That's amazing.
They haven't left.
I think Chris goes out of his way to come to my shoots, which I appreciate. But
I do.
Yeah, but talking about branding a little bit, like this little dog behind us, this Britto, in all of my, not every one of them, because I have to work with my sellers, right? And my seller's like, I don't want that ugly thing in my house. I can't put it in the house, or we don't have room for that here, and that's fine. But every listing I get the opportunity, I always bring, this is called For You, it's a little sculpture here. But every one of my listings, I always try to throw that dog in there somewhere in the photography, so that way when mostly my clients have been working with me because they know the story behind me bringing the sculpture, it's a memory marker. And I had one particular client, they were in a really beautiful Victorian home over here in Wheat Ridge, and I sold it a few years ago, and I brought this dog over, and the wife's like, that's not going in this house. Like, why would you do that? And then when I explained the why, she was like, oh, I get it. And I said, it's a memory marker. So if I'm out looking at properties with a client, and we're going to look at, usually use 6 or 8 properties for a day, because we don't want to just go like one house tomorrow and one house next week and one house here. It's better to find a day where we can put 5 or 6 into a day and then make a day out of it. Go out and look at properties. But by the time you're on that 3rd or 4th property, they start all kind of blending together. Or at the end of the day, we'll start talking about, okay, what did you like and what you didn't like? And they'll start explaining to me the house they loved. And I'm starting to piece the pieces together. And I'm realizing that they're picking the kitchen out of one house. They're picking the primary bedroom out of another house. And they're putting this ideal house together. And I'm like, okay, I get all those things are important to you, but we just talked about 4 different, that was in this house and that was in this house. So how do we bring it all into one house? And so that's where I came up with a memory marker. I don't know if I'm the one that came up with the idea. Well, I'll tell you where it came from. I saw some listings where someone had an inflatable dinosaur, and I thought it was funny that they were taking this inflatable dinosaur everywhere and putting it in their listings. And so that's where I got the idea from. And I don't know whose idea that I stole that from, but And I have this dog that my husband and I bought at an auction. So I was like, I'm going to use our Romero Britto dog. We used to live in Miami too, so we love Miami. But we got this at an auction. So now every one of my listings, I take this Romero dog, Britto dog, and I put it into the shots somewhere, and so that it's always there. So my clients know the story behind it, and they know the reason is by the end of the day, when that buyer or potential buyer is sitting down with their realtor, they're like, I like that one house. The one that had that stupid dog, or that one dog, that colorful dog, because it kind of stands out. So that's kind of my memory marker, and it's sort of my brand. It was funny. I was up working with a client up in Evergreen last year, and she had a son that was getting ready to go off to college, and I was explaining the dog, and he's like, "That's your brand," and I didn't really say that, and he's the one that coined that. So thank you, Calvin, for that. But he's like, "So that's kind of like your branding. That's your brand." I was like, I've never thought of it in that sense, but yeah, kind of, like every house that I can list, if the clients will allow me to bring Britto dog and stick him in there somewhere, obscure corner or whatever, then when my clients or even other potential buyers are going through, if you see a Romero Britto dog, it's probably my listing. So it's kind of my branding, same sort of thing, even with the photography angles and everything else. That is more subtle, but also super important that you're capturing that for your clients.
Right. I think it's important. Too, because there are so many realtors who don't use professional photographers. So when you're going to a listing appointment, you've got your ways of branding yourself, but the photography is a huge part of that, or just the media in general is a huge part of that. If you're showing your client that these are the photographs that you're going to get, this is an important part of what I do. I think that makes a good impression on the homeowner. He's actually spending the money to bring in a photographer and really make my house look as good as possible.
On that note, I always cover the photography. So when I'm working with a client, the last thing I want them to do is like, well, how can we save some money? No, I'll just do the photography on my phone, or my nephew does photography and I'm going to have him come do it. So I always tell my clients, I don't want to compromise on that. Like I was talking about earlier about swiping through on the Zillow. I was like, do not compromise on the photos, because if you're lacking on the photos, you're going to miss potential buyers. So I always say, I'm going to cover the cost. I charge this much for my fees, but part of that is my marketing, and part of my marketing is the photography. It's part of my branding. And I also drop, Christopher Weber, we have a listing coming up next week that the one of the sellers is an artist, and they have in this live work loft a photography studio. So they have an in-studio photographer, and when I was going through my listing presentation and telling what I bring to the table, one of those, I use Orchestrated Light photography. It's Christopher Weber. Him and his team are fantastic. And I'm sure that he went on and looked at the website before he said, okay, I'll let you pay for it. You're paying for it. You take care of it. But I always let my clients know I use Orchestrated Light photography. I use Christopher Weber and his team. And that is another thing that I bring to the table, where people are like, well, all the realtors are the same. So what do you bring to the table? And you really have to distinguish yourself on what you bring to the table. And one of those things is my photography. I pay for it. I take care of it. Whatever it deems, whatever that home needs, whether I feel like we need a virtual tour, or we need a drone shot, or we just need a floor plan, which we get all the time, or whatever it is that we do, I take care of those, so that way we're not compromising on it. I don't have to worry about those. Take that off the table. I'll take care of those costs, because that's how important it is to me, that I don't want my clients to be like, well, we can just hire somebody else to do it.
Right.
So it's really important to have someone with that relationship.
I agree. And to that point, when I go back to when I got started and I was looking for houses, I would look at the photos. That's the first thing you see. That's the first impression you get of any home are 100%. The photos online. And I noticed that the homes that either didn't have the shots that I wanted to see, I didn't want to waste my time going to visit houses that weren't going to work for me. And so I wanted to see the right amount of photos, and I wanted to show what I was specifically looking for in a house. And if they didn't show me that, I moved on. I'm not going to waste my time to go look at that house. And the homes, and sometimes the photography, was better because so we use wide angle lenses, and there's you can either make a house look way bigger than it actually is, or you can try to minimize that. So we do try to keep it a little more realistic, but the nature of the wide angle lenses is going to make it look bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so some of the houses I was, in the Highlands, older homes, I was like, oh, this house has, big rooms and everything. And I go in and look at it and they're tiny. So you don't want to give that kind of impression with the photography, but it drew me in. And the processing was good, and I was like, I like these photos, so that's what got me in the house.
So you want to keep that bit of realism, but again, you want it to be in its best absolute.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's our job, is to get people in the door. Yeah. But you don't want to be you don't want to be misleading.
Where they walk in and
you don't want them to be completely disappointed.
And I have clients sometimes both ways. Sometimes we'll walk in and like, wow, this home looks a lot better than it did even in the photos. Yeah. And then you have other ones that walk in and say, wow, this home looked a lot better without the pictures. But on that note, I do have a bit of a pro tip. If you're a buyer out there, actually, probably a good time to plug YouTube. If you're on my YouTube channel, there's a subscribe button. I don't know if Amen puts it here or here, but anyway, there's a subscribe button on there. Hit that subscribe button to the Denver Homes Market Report. But what I want to tell you is a little pro tip. When I have my buyers, when we're doing our buyer consultation, I'll tell them, if you're looking at photos, because everyone's going to be looking online. So when you're looking at photos, don't be afraid. I'm not saying look for these houses, but don't be afraid of the ones where they didn't even bother picking up the coffee cups or the clothes on the exercise machine they haven't used in 6 years, or the cluttered cabinets and cabinets and or countertops and all that stuff. Don't necessarily discount those, because a lot of other potential buyers are going to see that cluttered house and they'll be like, nope, I don't want somebody else's mess. And then just know that unless you're buying an investment property where you're buying it as is with everything in it, if you're buying a home, they should take most of their junk out of the house. So try to look past that clutter, because a lot of other potential buyers will see all that clutter. And as soon as they see that clutter and those terrible lighting, and it all goes hand in hand. Usually when the house is completely cluttered, it's also lackluster pictures. It's that brand we talked about earlier. There's a certain brand that comes with that. Like, exactly. I would not take a listing if I walk in and it is completely a mess. I'll be like, okay, I would love to take this listing, but here's what we have to do. Because I have a reputation that for properties I list, that they have to look a certain way, or at least do the best we can. And if it's an absolute cluttered mess, that might be the home for you, because you have less competition that are jumping in there and trying to put offers in on it. So you might be able to sneak in on that property because it's a total disaster, or even with the lousy pictures. But I know the lousy pictures is a tough one. Like that one, if the pictures are dark or weird angles, people just will not spend any time on it. And I try to coach my potential buyers, like, try to look past that. Look at the map. They'll look at the photos before the map. Yeah, they'll look through all the photos before they even look at the map and realize that it's on whatever street, like a busy street or whatever. And so that's, again, coming back to where the photos are just so important. And if you're a buyer out there and you're kind of like, well, try to look past that stuff. If everything else, go look at the map, go look at the area, look at the bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, and if all that stuff's kind of aligning, even if the place looks like a disaster, put it on our list. Let's go look at it in person and see what it looks like in person, because everybody else is swiping past it.
Well, and that's it's funny, because when I was looking, I was either looking for an older house that had already been remodeled, already had new plumbing, electrical, and all of that, and was ready to go, or I was looking for something that needed to be completely redone from scratch. So, so I was looking at some of the bad photos, in hopes of getting a deal on the property. But again, only if those photos showed me everything that I was looking for. That showed me the potential of the house. If they had 10 photos and one's of the toilet and one's of that's not telling me anything about the house. So no, I wasn't going to waste.
Hopefully every house has one of those. We don't need to take a picture of it.
Exactly.
That's funny. But you're right. On that other note too, you just mentioned about, I had my client from last year, the same one I was mentioning just a minute ago, when we were out looking at properties. We'd walk in and it was beautifully remodeled, but they'd be like, I wouldn't do those tiles, I wouldn't do that finish. And the last thing you want to do is buy this house and then that you're redoing what they had just done, because it's just different taste. Whatever. Or I remember back in, I think it was like the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, everyone wanted these Tuscan kitchens. Everyone thought they were Italians for some reason. Everyone wanted these copper, these big gaudy copper the fans, the exhaust fans. And the cabinets had these really thick granite that looked like you were in a Venetian hotel or something. And now when you walk through, you just look at those and you're like, oh boy, what were we thinking? I do like the current trend that I'm seeing right now. I'm seeing a lot of white and gold. like white cabinetry with gold trim, or fixtures with like clear glass with gold, gold. I love that look. I'm liking that, and I hope that trend kind of sticks. And then there's a certain blue that I'm loving recently that I'm seeing in houses. It's like a muted. I can't explain what it is, but kind of a muted. I don't even have it in my house, but it's a muted blue that I'm like that with gold. Those look good. I like that look. So I'm hoping that trend continues for a little bit. Yeah, we've gotten away from the gray, the gray, like sell it gray or whatever you call it. Yeah. And so where are we at now? Where do you see with colors that are really popping for real estate photography?
I mean, I see the gamut. So I see a lot of older homes. I don't know. There's a lot of different tastes out there.
I still like gray and white because I like that monochromatic sort of look, and then you can put like the pictures and everything. I still like it for photography, but I don't. I want to find a new palette. It's when I flip a house or I'm working with a client, I'm like, okay, we're going to paint it. We don't paint every house, but when we do, they're like, well, what should I paint it? And I'm always telling them, just paint it. There's even a name for it at Sherwin-Williams. I live right next to Sherwin-Williams. It's called Agreeable Gray. That's the actual color name. It's called Agreeable Gray. Yeah. So Agreeable Gray and then bright white trim, and I've been doing that since I've been here in Denver, so almost a decade. But I know that's getting tired, and I don't know what the next trend is, so I got to find that out.
Yeah, I mean it mostly white walls.
My house is white.
And
off white.
So in fact, some of the properties that I've shot recently that did have some bold color choices on the walls weren't moving. And so they had to go in and repaint everything and just get a neutral color. So a lot of the creativity that I'm seeing are like in the kitchen, even you have two-tone cabinets.
I like that look.
And so just variations on different colors that way. I typically like them. Every once in a while I'm like,
you got to be careful, and if you want to keep it neutral. I know when I bought my very first condo, I was 30 years old. I bought a condo in San Diego, and my uncle's a house painter, so he came in and painted it for me as kind of a gift. And he said, okay, everything will be Navajo white. So Navajo white was the color, So I was like, I don't even know what Navajo white is, but whatever. Yeah. And then when I got it done, and now over the years of learning, I was like, that was really a kind of a somewhere between beige and white coloring. I don't know what that was. It was kind of an off-white or eggshell white or something. But that was my very first condo. And kind of going back into that sort of like how I got into real estate sort of thing, or where things started. Last year, and I think it was last year or the year before, I sat down with our team and we were getting ready to do our planning for the next year. I think it was in 2004. And one of our colleagues was up doing the presentation, and it was one of our team leaders. And they're like, okay, here's a piece of paper. They handed a piece of paper to us. And they're like, what is your why? Like, why did you get into real estate? Like, why did you do real estate? And I was looking at this piece of paper, and this is white, blank piece of paper. I'm looking at it, I was like, what's my why? And I was kind of thinking about that. And then as we're going around the room, they were kind of going around to all my colleagues, and everyone was kind of telling their story. And that kind of came to me. And I was like, you know why I sell real estate is really because it brings this like clarity. It brings this it brings you like to where you own your own property. Like it's yours for the first time. Yeah. So my story kind of goes way back to like when I was born in the 70s. I was born in a nomadic family. It was kind of interesting. I was born in San Diego. So San Diego was always kind of my home base. That's like where I was born. But when I was 3 years old, my dad had 4 brothers. So one of them, I think it was my Uncle Bobby, went up to a potato chip factory up in Idaho, and that was supposed to be the greatest job. So my dad, of course, packs up the car, and we go up to Idaho, and we're living in Idaho when I was like 3 years old. And of course, the potato chip factory was not all that great. So then after the potato chip harvest, I would imagine, we go back down to San Diego. So then we're back down to San Diego. And then from San Diego, then we went to Wyoming because my Uncle Gilbert was working on the oil rigs up there, and the oil rigs were going off. So my dad packed everyone up in the car, and now we're like 74, 75, driving up to Gillette, Wyoming. We lived in a little trailer. It's kind of funny. That was the only time we actually had money in my life. Like we had snowmobiles. My dad had money because the oil rig would, the oil would pump, so everyone would get the money right away. Right. The problem is they didn't know how to budget it. So when the oil dried up, the money dried up just about quickly. Right. So we ended up back in San Diego. Then my parents split up when I was 7. And even before this, back this up just a little bit further, my father was married before meeting my mother and had a daughter and 3 sons with a Native American wife. So I have 3 brothers and a sister that are on my dad's side that are older than me. And then my mom had been married to a Navy guy and had 2 daughters. So I grew up with my 3 brothers on the Indian reservation and my sister, and we'd go up and visit them once in a while. And then my 2 sisters, me and my mom and dad, we all lived together. And then when we split up, the family split up, my dad went off on his own, and he always loved Texas. He would honky tonk, he wore a cowboy hat all the time, like this old raggedy cowboy hat. He was a cabinet maker, so on his pants, on his jeans, they always had like sawdust. Just it was already impregnated into the thigh of his pants. So I just remember his look all the time. And then so we split up. My dad went to Houston, Texas, so he was living in Houston. My mom and I were together with my 2 sisters. And I started getting to be around like 9 years old, I think it was. And I went to go visit my dad in Houston. I came back from summer break, and I was just being really terrible kid. My mom was like, I don't know what's going on with you. You know, maybe you're getting to this age that you need to go be with your father, this type of stuff. So shortly thereafter, she sends me out to my dad. She goes, hey, you're going to go live with your dad. So I went to live with my dad. I was like 10 years old. And then while we were in Houston together, it's hot and humid there, but while we were in Houston, my mom had, my sisters were older by that point. They were getting up to their later teens. So my one sister, Teresa, had gotten married, so she was married. My other sister, Carol, was with her boyfriend. So my mom moved up to Washington State with a cousin of ours, second cousin up there. So she went up there, and then I came back to San Diego with my father. So my mom's now up in Washington, and I'm in San Diego. And then it got to a point where my dad and I weren't getting along. I went to, I don't even know how many grade schools. Like, Idaho, I wasn't in school, but then Wyoming I was, and then San Diego I was, and then out to Texas I was. So I went to all these different schools. Even in my freshman year of high school, I went to 4 different high schools. So It was a pretty chaotic time. But then things kind of came back together when I got to my later teens. Things kind of settled down a little bit. I lost my sister. My sister was murdered by her ex-husband, but we took in her 2 children. So we took on all these children, but then we lived in another house, and things got a little bit more calm. By that time, I'm in my 20s. So I joined the Navy. And when I joined the Navy, it was like clarity to me. It was like, wow, this is like you wake up at a certain time, you go to bed at a certain time. I've never had the lifestyle where you're in the family and the family gets up in the morning, has breakfast together, not even on the weekends or weekdays or whatever. And then you're at the dinner table at 5 o'clock. My husband had that, more of that kind of regimen. I didn't have that until I joined the Navy. And then when I joined the Navy, I had this regimen, and I kind of took to the Navy like fish to water, for a lack of better analogy, but I really loved it. And then, this whole time, my family never owned a property. Like we'd always rented from somewhere. We were always in some sort of apartment somewhere, and we were always moving in, moving out. And really, as I got older, looking back on it, really what it was we'd get up to one area, all the bills would stack up, the money would dry up, and then we'd bolt and go back down to San Diego. And then the same thing. It was just the way it was. And so when I got through the Navy, got out of the Navy, I was like, I got to my cousin, who was a realtor at the time. He was fairly new in San Diego. And I said, hey, I got a little bit of money. Actually, my friend Zipe and I, we had bought a boat while we were in the Navy. So we bought this 32-foot Chris Craft, and it was in a harbor. It was a guy retiring from the Navy. We found him online. And so we bought his boat, and we lived on the boat. We were on opposite deployment schedules. So for 6 months or so, I'd be on the boat, and then I'd be out on deployment, and then Zipe would be there on the boat. So we owned this boat, co-owned this boat for like 2 years, lived in the harbor. Great times. It was really fun. But as we kind of wrapped that up, and I was getting out of the Navy, I was like, okay, it's time to buy a condo, or I want to at least look into this. So I reached out to my cousin, who was just selling real estate, and I was like, hey, I want to buy this condo. He's like, yeah, okay. So he helped me with that process. And throughout that whole process, he's like, you're good at this. He goes, what are you going to do? You're out of the Navy. What are you doing now? And I was working in catering. I'd mentioned earlier, I worked in a restaurant. So that was the only thing I knew to fall back on. So I was working in a catering place, and they owned like 16 restaurants at the time. So I was working at this restaurant group in San Diego and had a little bit of money. So I bought this condo. And when the first time I bought that condo, and I lived there it was a short time. I actually had no money. It was funny. My now husband was my boyfriend at the time. He bought my couch because I had no money. So he took every dime I had, even though I did an FHA loan for like first time home buyer. So there's not a ton of money down, but still, it was everything I had and then some to do it. But I just realized that just brought a lot of clarity and calmness to me. Like the Navy brought me some regimen, and then buying the condo, I was like, wow, I can paint this place, I can do the floors, I can change the cabinets, I can do all this stuff. And my dad being a cabinet maker, I'd worked with him all my life in the cabinet. I'd even worked professionally in the cabinet shop with him, not his cabinet shop, the one that we both worked at. From the time I was like 16 years old, 17 years old, all the way up until I was 24 when I joined the Navy. And then I went into the Navy, and then I got out when I was around 30. So I bought this condo when I was 30 years old, and I was like, it just brought this sense of like community. That was the one thing that brought to me, was like, wow, I got to know some of my neighbors around there. Yeah. I started walking to the coffee shops. I actually had when I got into real estate, in 2003, there was a coffee shop down the corner, and they allowed me. I went in there, talked to them, and said, "What if I put a cork board up on your wall here for everybody to come and they can put in their businesses?" And then I used that to put my business up there, and then I was the one that managed it. So I was able to go in there and clean it up each month and all that kind of stuff. And so it was just one of those things where real estate brought this sort of from this chaotic upbringing to this sort of calm and like I felt like I had a place.
Yeah. And
that really is when I sat down on that white piece of paper, and I didn't even write anything down. I just said this little story to all my colleagues who I was fairly new to the company. And I said all of it, and we got done with it. And everyone was like, "That you should tell that story." And I was like, "Well, how do I tell that story?" So now here I am on the podcast. And it's a great opportunity to come together with you and sort of tell that story. But that's how I got into real estate, and that's kind of why I've stayed with it for all these years, through the ups and downs, and 2008 and 9, 10, all that stuff. And right now we're in a market where we've had a seller's market since about 2013, 14, coming out of that sort of meltdown.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of got stronger and stronger and stronger all the way up until we hit these interest rates at 8%, about 2 years ago. And then it kind of shifted. And now we're kind of shifting into this buyer's market where now we have more inventory online. Average house on the market, once you go to the MLS to when you actually get an offer, is about 45 to 50 days. So buyers now have more choices. Right. So now buyers are in the driver's seat, but they've only been for maybe this year, maybe. And I started talking about we're heading into a buyer's market in January, February on the podcast. And then as we went into the summer, I could see that we weren't quite as robust as we had been in years past. Mm-hmm. And then we had, even in the summer, usually the inventory will shrink quite a bit. And even as we were getting into August and in September, the inventory stayed pretty steady and it didn't balloon too much, but we did still keep going up. Well, normally we would have brought the inventory down. So we're in a solid buyer's market now. Yeah. Interest rates, they did an interest rate cut last month, but the interest rates, those cuts are the overnight loans. Those are where the banks loan each other money to keep their books balanced. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't always equate to the mortgage loan. So if you look at the 10-year treasury, that's what ties into it the most. So if you're looking for where the rates are at, look at the 10-year treasury. I was looking on the financial channel this morning, it's 3.9 something, 95 or whatever. So we're below 4%. So your interest rates now are probably, I'm guessing, right around, depending on your situation, probably right around 6%. A little lower than 6% if you're putting more money down, you got great credit, and a little above 6% if not. So that's kind of where we're at right now. All right.
Well, another similarity that we have is, I got my first property was a condo, and it was when I went to grad school. My dad had invested in property down in Colorado Springs, and that had done well for him. And they were very interested in helping me buy a property when I went to school. So they helped me buy my first condo when I was 24, I think.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's paid off now. I still have it.
You still have it?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So I rent it out, and
very cool.
But it's paid off.
And where's it located? What area?
It's in Golden.
Okay.
It's in Golden Ridge condos. Yeah. So it's kind of across 6th Avenue from the Taj Mahal, the Jefferson County.
Yeah.
Buildings.
Yep.
It's a good location. I bought it for $32,500.
When you were 24 years old?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that real estate ends up being a really good investment. And it's one of those things that I got drawn to it after I bought my first condo. And it was one of those things where I was like, this really does help people.
Yeah.
It does. No, it's one of those things.
I paid off all my student loans. I refinanced it for like $56,000. Paid off all my student loans, rented it out, had the renter paying my mortgage and my student loans for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is great. And, and like I said, now it's paid off, and so I'm still renting it out. And,
you touched on something a lot of times when I'm talking to first-time low buyers, especially like younger buyers. They're like, I don't want to buy a place because I don't want to be stuck there. Right. I don't want to buy it. And the reality of it is you're not necessarily stuck there. Maybe you live there for 3 or 4 or 5 years or whatever, and then you can move on and have somebody else rent it, or maybe take the equity out and buy something else and then put a renter in there. You're not actually stuck when you buy real estate.
And especially because I bought in Golden. And the reason I bought it was because after college, I went overseas for a couple of months, kind of as my graduation gift. I love to travel, and so that's what I requested. And so by the time I got back to Golden to start school, there were no places to rent.
Yeah.
Nothing. I was going to be out by 6th and Sims, Lakewood.
Yeah.
Essentially. And so my parents were like, we'll help you buy a place. And so I actually bought a place. So for the first semester, I was going through the process of looking for a place to buy. I was, anyway, I was living with a roommate for that first semester. And then, so by the winter, by the end of the first semester, I was able to move into the condo and have it as my own. But yeah, that was...
Yeah, it's similar story. When Victor and I were together, he had got picked up at Boston University for his PhD. So he finished up his master's. We met in San Diego when he was getting his master's degree. And that's when we met back in like 2000. And then he got picked up by BU to go do his PhD. So he moved to BU and he was renting a place on campus. And BU's campus is not like Harvard. Like Harvard is like a compound. Like you go in there, you go through gates and there's like, courtyards and all this stuff. BU, you're just driving through the city and he'll be like, that's owned by the university. That one's owned by the university. It's not really a university like a campus like that. It's just all along Commonwealth Boulevard, all these random buildings. And so he rented a apartment there. It was nice. It was brand new. It had this interesting smell because of paint and all that stuff. But so he had this little studio, but he was paying $1,600 a month. Yeah. And I was like, holy crap, $1,600 a month. This is way back in 2004, I guess it was, 5. And so he rented it for the first year. And then as he's kind of in the year, I was like, we can probably buy something. I'd already owned my little condo. His dad, when he went to get his master's, his sister also came. He's from Taiwan originally. So his sister also studied here at San Diego State. So his dad had bought them a condo, which I later sold for them. That was kind of cool. Nice. And he never even came to the U.S. for the sale. We sent everything to the consulate in Taiwan and they signed it there. Right. But that's on a side note. We end up buying this little condo. It's like 340 square feet right on Comm Ave, where you can get on the T. They call it what we call it RTD here. They call it the T there, but it's a subway. So you get on the T and it's above ground in most are in the suburb areas, and then it goes down to the ground for a subway. But we live right on Commonwealth Avenue, and so he could just jump on the T, go down to the campus, and then come back. So he lived there, and then when the market crashed in 2008, we were living in both areas. We had a condo in San Diego, we had one in Boston, and it just wasn't sustainable because we were flying back and forth. JetBlue loved us because we were flying back JetBlue every couple months to visit each other. And so I was like, this is not sustainable. Real estate has really slowed down. So we had to make some changes. My father had passed away in 2010 or 9. And so that was another deciding factor. So we rented out my condo in San Diego, and then I moved to Boston. We lived in this little 340 square foot place as he finished up his PhD. And so my point of that is that you're not necessarily stuck. You can buy a property and still move around. You just have to figure out what you're going to do with that property, whether you're going to sell it if it's in a market where it makes sense to sell it, or maybe you rent it out, hold on to it until 24 years later.
Well, and if you're buying near a university, for rentals, that's great. Like I said, when I came back, there was no place to rent. So there's a high demand in Golden for, small condos, for places for college students to live.
Absolutely.
And so, it's so easy to rent out. So.
Cool. Well, we're kind of coming up on our hour here. We're going to wrap up today's show. But thanks for tuning into the Denver Homes Market Report podcast. I appreciate it. I do want to give a quick shout out to Christopher Weber. And what's your website? Orchestratedlight.com. So orchestratedlight.com. Yep. And then what's a phone number over there if you want to give you a call?
So my direct number is 303-525-9008. Okay. If you want to schedule photography, I do have a manager, Joe. He's great.
Joe's fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, and so I brought him on to help with.
Tell us a little about Joe. He's got a little history.
Oh, yeah. Joe's got some history.
We might do another hour here, but give me the synopsis of Joe and how you guys have formed that relationship, because he is a fantastic manager.
Yes, and so I had actually brought Joe on in 2020. So right before the pandemic, and he was with me for about 2.5, almost 3 years, I think. Okay. And then he got a studio photography job. So that's part of his history. Is he's an amazing photographer. He's an amazing editor. And when I first started my business, he was actually one of the people that I looked up to in the local photography community as being one of the best in the business. Yeah. It's great because there's 2 of them, and I'm good friends with both of them now.
That's awesome.
But Joe had actually called me up because I had photographed a really nice high-end property for the homeowner, and they didn't have an agent. And so I was like, if you need an agent, let me know.
You know hundreds.
I know a lot of agents.
Yeah.
I know the ones who could probably best serve you here. And
Yeah.
she's like, no, I'm going to do it myself. So, months later, she hired an agent, and Joe was that agent's photographer.
Oh, okay.
And so he called me up, and they're like, you took some great photos, and so we don't feel like we need to reshoot the whole property, but they've made some changes, and so I'm going to shoot some things, but can we still use your photos for the marketing? And it was the homeowner who paid me.
Yep.
And basically, you have a right to use the photos until the property sells.
Yep.
And since the homeowner paid me, I was like, yeah, it's her house. So, go ahead and use the photos.
Sure.
So Joe was like, you want to get together for a beer? So it was a snowy day, and so didn't have a lot of business going on. So we met for a drink or five, and
nice.
So we spent a whole afternoon just talking shop, getting to know each other, and so we stayed in touch, over the years. And I had heard that he had closed his business.
Yeah.
Just for the health reasons, basically. Kind of short story.
Sure.
But I was like, I need help. My business is growing. You know exactly what you're doing. You've been in this a little bit longer than I have, and have advanced his techniques beyond what I was doing at the time. And I was like, I would love to have you part of my team.
Absolutely.
And he's like, So in fact, he hired 3 of the 4 photographers that I had. So I had him, and so he's great with training photographers. He's great because we have dedicated editors. We don't just send him out to random editors. I know them by name. I have 3 editors. They work for me only. Yeah. And so Joe helps improve their editing skills. He helps the photographers with their shooting skills. He answers the phone calls with the agents, and he knows as much as I do, so he can handle any situation. So while he was gone, I had a virtual assistant. Yeah. Very nice guy. But he just doesn't have the knowledge and depth that Joe does. I don't have to worry about anything with Joe. That's awesome. So it's been, I brought him back in June. So the business he was photographing for ended up closing. The owner had other businesses going on, and the clients were driving him nuts. And he's just like, I'm done. So, I got Joe back, and nice. He's loving it so far. Excellent. I'm loving having him back, and it's. So anyway, Joe's number. If you want to schedule photography, there you go. It's 720-495-0845. All right, we'll get that up on the screen as well. So orchestratedlight.com. Check it out for the website. My website, obviously, you guys know, DenverHomesMarket.com. And we're going to close out this podcast. I'm Ricky Schoonover with 8Z Real Estate. We've had a fantastic conversation here with learning a little bit about Chris and about why he does real estate photography, and why that fancy phone in front of us is not going to replace Chris. And so we'll be around for a while, I think. And so thank you all very much for tuning in. The podcast, it's generally a 15 to 20 minute podcast. So this one's a little longer today. We were had an opportunity to do this interview. So thank you very much for tuning in. Orchestratedlight.com. Make sure you check that out. DenverHomesMarket.com. If you're a seller out there, you're looking to sell your home, Ricky Schoonover, 8Z Real Estate, 720-688-5110. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you later.